What's up guys, this is Sugi JRPG here, and today I'm delighted to review Metal Slug Tactics for PC. Now this is a spin-off title from the main Metal Slug franchise, which has been historically associated as run-and-gun side-scroller games, so this is a bit of a departure from that in terms of gameplay. Now at its heart, it's probably catered a bit more towards the people who are familiar with the series already and have some type of a connection to these cast of characters which are already familiar from the previous games, but it needs to be said that there's no prior requirement for you to play any of the previous Metal Slug games in order to jump into the tactics, as the story is definitely a standalone, and obviously it's not exactly a franchise which you play for the story, you play it for the gameplay and maybe for the aesthetical direction that they have built it over these decades. Now in terms of the pricing, it's currently sitting at $25, which isn't too high price for a game like this, but there are some third-party vendors where you can pick it up cheaper and support this channel by doing so at the same time. But let's get started out with this review. Now when it comes to the gameplay, Metal Slug Tactics isn't exactly like your traditional JRPG tactics games, so in case you came looking for something like Fire Emblem or Tactics Ogre, well, this is probably not gonna be the game for you. The gameplay is a lot more like roguelike than it does as tactics style game, and what I mean by this, that the game has technically no pure progression. So basically the game is broken down to 4 different zones, 3 normal zones, and then there's the 4th zone which has the final boss. And you have to complete a couple of maps until you can complete a zone, and if you lose any single map or a single zone, it's going to be game over, and all the progression that you made in terms of levels, upgrades, or abilities that you gain for the characters, it's all going to be wiped out, and you're going to be starting all the way back from the start line. And yes, every time you do that, you can obviously change your composition for your characters, and each of the characters have different abilities and different loadouts, and different weapons. So there's a bit of a variety in terms of gameplay, and you kind of have to just get really good at the game, learn the AI, learn the mechanics, and learn how to save your ammunition for the boss fights and all that type of stuff until you can actually beat the game. Now there's 9 different playable characters in the game. You only get to start with 3, which I personally don't like that much because it doesn't necessarily help you to diversify your strategy in the beginning of the game in case you're really bad at this game. Obviously there's different difficulty options, and even the easy one is kind of hard, I'm not gonna lie. And when you actually beat the game for the first time, you're going to be unlocking your first character. Also beating 2 zones is going to be unlocking you another character, and technically you can actually unlock 2 characters if you complete the game for the first time, in case you're going to be doing multiple zones. So there's going to be actually a lot of like variability in terms of the gameplay, as your starting location on each zone is going to be different on every single time, so potentially which maps you're going to be using can be different on every single time, and there's a lot of different loadout options and upgrade paths which you're going to be getting as you get experience throughout the maps and all that type of stuff. So there is level of customization, there's a level of variability. The boss fights are always going to be the same though, outside from the composition that you're going to be having. You're only going to be limited to 3 characters per map. On hindsight, I would have actually enjoyed to have at least 4 characters. That has been, you know, historically, well, in tactics games you usually get at least 5. That has always been kind of the historical standard throughout this genre, so I think that there would have been a much more interesting in terms of gameplay with multiple characters. But in order to recompensate that, you do have this resurrection ability. So basically if a character dies on the map, you can resurrect them with these things, which are limited. So that's a mechanic which is very intrinsically unique to this game, and it kind of compensates the lack of multiple characters, but I rather still would have had 4 characters instead of 3. Now in terms of the actual gameplay, I think the tactics combat is kind of nice, but I felt like the interface was way more busy than it needed to be, and kind of getting used into it, and in terms of like hinting the player how everything's going, what is this and that. Yes, there are tooltips which kind of tell you about the abilities, what they do, but I felt like this wasn't necessarily the most smoothest way to deliver the information to the player. So I'm not a big fan of the interface. I got used to it, but I didn't like it very much initially. In terms of the controls, I also felt like did play this both on mouse and keyboard and on controller. I feel like the key binding's definitely going to be a lot more better. It's a small nuancing point, but it's something that I just like felt that, yeah, like that wasn't maybe the most smoothest way to control the characters and use their abilities. Like there could have been a bit better options there. It's a minor detail, but I thought I would be mentioning it. Now in terms of graphics, I think the pixel art is very nice and detailed. The animations are very good. It's very faithful to the original Metal Slug games, but there is no blood. So in the original games, at least one of them that I played did have blood on it. So this was something that was censored in this game. Maybe they wanted to cater into a wide variety of audience and they had to make it like PG-13 or something. I definitely think that the blood would have been making it a lot more faithful to the original games. And I did also like the variety on each stage. There's elevation, there's different enemies with different abilities, and there's a lot of interactable terrain. There's like jumping platforms, ropes, and all types of things, which kind of make the stages feel a lot different from each other, and the interactable terrain and all the walls and stuff like that. It just kind of gives like a refreshing elements into this. And the appeal here really is that you're going to be completing a game on different team compositions using different paths and builds. But if you aren't exactly like a player who likes to play a game over and over again, like I do, who are a very story-focused player, this may not be for you. So just saying that, in case you don't like repetition, I'm not saying it's fully feeling repetitive all the time. I'm saying that there is a level of diversity here in terms of gameplay and in terms of the characters, but I wish like some of the characters would be unlocked already from the beginning, or there would be some type of money system which you get by playing, which would allow you to unlock instead of going through these weird achievement routes to get them. Now in terms of sound and music, I think the OST is quite mid. I can't say I love it, but it somewhat fits into the game's atmosphere. I think it's similar to the classical Metal Slug games, and there are obviously these English voice lines which you're gonna be hearing, not like full dialogue, but just like the stuff you're gonna be hearing if you have played the other Metal Slug games. These are like trademark stuff, and so if you're familiar with that, you're gonna be appreciating that. And obviously the game's whole dialogue is on text, so there's not going to be any form of voice acting in the game. Not that it really needed one, as this is not exactly a story-focused game. Now let's talk about the story, and it kind of goes without saying that no spoiler tags are required here, as even the most hardcore Metal Slug fans are going to agree with me that this is not a franchise that you play for the story, and nobody cares about the story. And, you know, it's not a very complex thing. There's not really even a proper intro cinematic here or anything. They're not even trying really with the story. It's just like random dialogue almost here. And you have a main villain known as Donald Morden, who is a recurring villain from the Metal Slug series. He is now controlling these zones basically, and you're the good guys and he's the bad guy, so you have to go stop him. And you might have guessed it, yeah, he is going to be the final boss in this game. And there are some backstory dialogues that you're able to unlock in the game if you're going to be completing a certain achievement. And when you actually lose in the game, there might be some type of dialogue happening in the workshop between the characters. Very minimal stuff, and these background stories are probably the most amount of lore you're going to be getting. So unless you're like really into these characters, I can't see that you're going to be really caring about much of that stuff. And as I said, like, it's not a story that you're going to be swayed over. It's not going to be interesting. And there's very minimal amounts of actual dialogue. There's going to be a little bit of that every time you're going to be entering any single zone, like a transmission of sorts. There's like literally like 5 lines maybe, and then the final boss is going to be talking a bit in the very end, and that's pretty much it. There's like literally much no story whatsoever to be talked about in this game. These are my closing thoughts on the game. I think Metal Slug Tactics is a game that is kind of made for niche audience, either for people who are into Metal Slug or people who really like the tactics style gameplay but don't care about progression systems or RPG elements, which might be a minority to be honest, and for people who don't really mind playing the game over and over again. So if you're a person that doesn't really get too bored on the gameplay loop too fast, this might be an ideal game for you, as there's a bit of refreshing elements on each playthrough as you play throughout the game, as you can go through different zones on different order and different maps, different loadouts, and different different characters. But I did feel that there could have been a lot more into the game. They could have definitely added a one extra zone for the diversity's sake, and there could have been some type of arcade mode like survival thing where you would have just tried to survive long as possible in some type of battlefield or something, which would have made something more interesting, and maybe multiplayer would have been kind of nice as well. So I think there was a lot of missed potential with this game in terms of features and elements, especially for the price that it's asking in terms of like how long is the game. I mean, you can speed run the game in a one single hour, but in terms of the completionist, that is ranked as 42 hours in how long to beat. But personally, I thought it was an okay game, maybe a bit more than I was willing to pay. Obviously, I did get it on discount on a third-party site. Make sure you're going to be using the links down below in case you want to buy it on a bit cheaper than $25. I think it's definitely worth 10 or 15. But I would probably still enjoy a lot more of the other Metal Slug games. But I don't mind that they went to this experimental route, and maybe they're going to be dropping out another Metal Slug Tactics, which is going to be dropping these roguelite elements, and it's going to be playing a lot more like a progressive RPG tactics game, which would be awesome to see. But thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for next reviews and news on the channel. Subscribe, like, and comment, and I will be seeing you in the next video.